Hello and welcome to Alan's Garage. Don't worry, you have not tuned into the wrong channel on YouTube. I am Gary and I know I've been away for a few weeks. Thank you very much for your patience. Unfortunately, I think crawling around under my Anglia a few weeks ago, I did something to my shoulders and they have been aching like anything. And I thought that the very best thing to do would be just give them a good rest for a few weeks until I'm able to move around without them hurting. And thankfully, they are a lot better. So, not Gary's garage. This is in fact my dad's garage. Unfortunately, he passed away last year, and this is a wonderful space that he has built up over the years, and many a great project has started in here, especially my own Anglia, which obviously I've been doing on the channel so far. Today, however, I have the horrible task of continuing with just the painfulness of clearing out this space, the tools and the vehicles that he loved. So today we're going to make a start on one of those vehicles, so let's get it in and we'll have a good look at it and I'll explain what we're going to be doing. So this is my dad's 1998 Mitsubishi Shogun 3.5 V6 long wheelbase. And, I mean, let's face it, it's a lovely car. About 4 years ago, there was a bit of rust around the rear arches and sort of by the rear doors. So he stripped it down, repaired that section and gave the whole car a full respray in this lovely combination of Fiji blue, and which is a Mitsubishi colour, and a Mercedes metallic silver, actually the same silver that is on the little stripe down the side of my Anglia. So this is now mine and it has sat for nearly 2 years now, and unfortunately there's a couple of bits that has failed its MOT. And just to remind you, for non-UK viewers, the MOT is our annual safety check that is done by an independent body, and it checks to make sure that a vehicle matches up with a specific set of minimum standards. And unfortunately, this currently does not meet those standards. I'll go through individually all the bits, but mostly it is rust. So what I'm going to need to do is get the car up in the air, and thankfully we were very spoiled by having this wonderful 4-post ramp here in my dad's garage. So I'll be making full use of it to get the car right up in the air. Thankfully no crawling around on my back, trying to do some welding this time, and we'll get under there, we'll give all the bits that need welding a good clean up, weld up where needed, and then hopefully we can get it for another MOT. And if that passes, then I will be using it because I've got a little bit of heavy towing to do. One of the things is that, actually, spoilers, this ramp is coming home. So yeah, I need to disassemble it and get it up the country. But with the current car I've got as a tow vehicle, this ramp is too heavy for it. So I need something a bit beefier, and this will fit the bill perfectly. It has well over 3 tons of towing capacity, which is fantastic. So what we need to do now is get this up in the air, and I'll take you through all the bits underneath that need doing, and then we can get started on it. So coming under the car, and the phrase that was used on the MOT certificate was various underbody corrosion. So we've got a few spots on the chassis that are a little bit crusty on both sides, around sort of up by the suspension spring there, and then on the other side again a few spots that are a little bit crusty. There's a fuel pipe just there that is a little bit horrible as well, and if I remember, one of these body mounts as well was not looking too brilliant. I have to look back at the MOT certificate to find out what it is. And the other thing is that the exhaust, well, it's leaking from 2 or 3 places, mostly around joints, really difficult places to get to. So I think what I'm going to do is just replace the whole exhaust, because as you can probably see, there's quite a few joins in it. I think what has happened is, as bits have blown over the time, you know, I can look at that there, obviously a back box used for, or a silencer for a much bigger pipe, and my dad's just made do and mend with what he had on hand. You know, as he does, he adapts. Adaptive engineering, that's where the name came from. And yeah, I think some of the pipes are a little bit on the small side, so I'm thinking that it might be affecting the performance, because it's 200 horsepower, 3.5 litre engine. So let's try to allow it to breathe as much as possible and put a decent exhaust on it. So yeah, there's a few spots that I'm going to have to get to and try to clean up. So first thing to do is to start stripping some stuff off. So I definitely need to get to the chassis over by the exhaust. So I may as well take, and I know I'm replacing the exhaust, so I may as well take the exhaust off. So it seems as good a place to start as any. Okay, so we have the Y pipe off eventually, and the rest of it, and there's lots of space there for all of the exhaust parts. So come all the way down, and then it's going to have to loop round the axle and spring there and disappear out the back. But that does now give me much better access to this chassis area, which is a little bit rusty. So next thing to do will be to get out grinder, wire wheel, hopefully try to make this look a lot nicer than it currently does. So I'm on the passenger side now, just moving all of these brake pipes out of the way and the fuel pipe. And that fuel pipe that the MOT tester said was a bit rusty, well, by literally just touching it and moving it away from the chassis, it's now dripping. So yeah, that was definitely a good shout by the MOT tester, and just so many reasons why having these annual tests is such a good idea. Because if that had let go, you know, driving down the road, which it quite easily could have done, you know, I barely moved that pipe, then yeah, that could have been quite problematic, and that's just dripping at the moment with just gravity, and that's the fuel, high pressure fuel feed. So, you know, that would be sitting at 3 bar of pressure. So that would be coming out there a lot quicker if the pump was running. So I'm going to put a clamp on the pipe, on the hose, just up the back there by the tank, and then I can disconnect and remove this pipe because that's going to need to be replaced. So after some time with the grinder, I've cleaned up the chassis a bit. I did end up taking out the shocks so that I can get to these sections here, the shock tower, and you can see there's a nice little hole there that's going to need to be cut out and patched over. And then over on this side, again, cleaned that up. There's a little bit of a hole there behind the shock tower. And then the main thing on this side was there was a crack there. So I've chopped it out with the grinder, and it is absolutely full of various random bits of metal. So I shall try to get as much of that out as possible, because all those loose bits are obviously going to just sit around in there, collect water, and rot it out a bit more. So yeah, I'll dig all of that lot out, then I can look at patching that up. So yeah, some cardboard templating and welding to do. So I've got some cardboard templates now for the bits I've chopped out. So, one over there, well, on the floor now. One over there, and then another one ready for up in there. So I shall go and chop these out of some steel, and then we can look at getting those welded in. So I think that is the worst of the welding done under the chassis. So there's the sections just up here on either side by the strut towers, and this bit under here. They're all welded up, ground back, and I've gone over with a lick of paint as well just to protect it. So hopefully that will be enough to satisfy the MOT tester. But the next thing I need to do is sort out this big gap along here, which is where the exhaust was. And the exhaust now on the floor in multiple pieces. So on to making a full exhaust from the downpipes all the way to the back of the car. And to do that, I have acquired a couple of new tools, and a huge thank you to my patrons who have made that possible. So I have a horizontal bandsaw, so I will be able to place whatever I need to cut in here, and then the weight of this will just come down and will slowly cut through it, which is very nice. And I've also got over here a little belt sander so that I can smooth things off and, you know, just make things. So these two should be a nice addition to my workshop at home, but for the moment they're here, and we need to get started on making an exhaust. So I have all my new exhaust parts here. So there's a nice big silencer, a new catalytic converter so that Captain DCAT doesn't kick me in the balls, some V-band clamps for joining it together, flexible section, and then a selection of bends, everything from, I think it's 15, 30, 45, 60 and 90 degrees, and then a nice big length of straight, and hopefully all of that lot will be enough to make a nice exhaust for the Shogun. And it's all 2¼ inch or 57mm. So I did a quick online calculator, and it suggested that for 200 horsepower I want about a 2.1, 2.2 inch exhaust. So hence 2¼ try to hopefully free up as much of the power that the car's got as possible. So the first part of the exhaust puzzle is going to be this Y pipe here that comes from the two manifolds, and the other joint is right up the top here. Unfortunately this is quite close to this cross member, so it's going to I was originally thinking about putting a nice bit of pipe on and then one half of a V-band clamp, but given how close that comes to this cross member when it's taken off, there's only about an inch or so, maybe 2 inches at a push there to make that easy to come out. So I think what I'll do is put that straight onto there, and that will be the basis of where we start fabricating the rest of the exhaust from. So that's the first bit, just tacked on for the V-band clamp, and that's all I'm going to do at the moment. I will go through and just mark up and measure and cut and then just tack every piece, and then when I've got all of it just tacked together and in the right place, that's when I'll then pull it all off and do a big batch welding session of putting it all together. But first piece of the puzzle is now done, so we can go whip that back on the car and look at the next piece, which is probably going to be the other half of the V-band clamp, maybe then a short section of straight, a flexi, and then the catalytic converter. I've got the first part of the puzzle here, a couple of short straight bits in between the cat and the flexi, and those are going to go up in here and come over this bit of chassis. And I have roped in help from a friend, Rob, who's also one of my patrons. Thank you very much, Rob. He's popped in to give me a hand because trying to hold all of these things in place and line them up and mark them is going to be a pain, so yeah, roped him in for the day. So we're going to go over here with that and just insert that just a fraction, and we need to make sure this is going to be pointed roughly through here and over there. So yeah, if you mark those up and if you draw a line between the two pieces as well, so like a straight line, yeah, along its length, and that'll also help to line everything up.
Oh, can't get the pen in the right place. And then move your hand. There we go.
Okay, and do you want to just quickly mark the other side as well, if you can get to it?
Yep, except this is moved.
Okay.
No problem. I'm good at drawing a finger.
I've had worse on my finger.
And it begins. Yeah, they've moved a little bit, but you should have enough to...
Yeah, okay. Okay, so we've got the front part of it tacked up into place and it's pointing in roughly the right direction. So we're now just figuring out the bit to go over this chassis member and to the silencer. So we've got a couple of 15-degree angles here and a length of other slightly smaller pipe which we've been able to slip up inside. and we're just figuring out exactly where that's going to need to go, ready to cut the new bit of pipe. And yeah, so we're looking pretty good. We're almost at the rear axle.
We're good.
Okay, so we're going to go, so that's there, and then a little bit more for insertion. I think about there. Okay, so we've got this straight bit cut up and we're going to weld it to this 15-degree angle and going to just lay that on top of there and do a butt weld on it. So these are slightly more difficult welds because there's not any overlap. So let's give it a try and see how much I screw this one up. Hold it round, safety squint. Okay, so that's that bit tacked together, and that's going to go in over here and slide into the flexi, something like that. And there's still just a little bit of adjustment on there to clear over this cross member, and there is brackets just here for the exhaust rubbers, so there will be some kind of hanger going across here that will also support that up and across in the right place. So the next thing to do then is move to this joint here and try to get the back box lined up, and then we can get these two pipes marked up and tacked together.
That much, but it doesn't matter too much, does it? That's probably where you want it.
Yeah, that's where I want it.
Yeah, so I don't actually need to hold that. I can hold this with stability.
That has moved to the fraction.
A little like that?
Yeah, that looks good, I think. Actually, we come this way. Fraction. There's another mark here. I'll put a third marker. Yeah, about there.
Yeah, you happy?
Yep. Okay, so we've got the V-band clamp now on the front part of the silencer, and we're now looking at what's going to go up and over the axle. So we need to sweep up to clear the axle and make sure that it doesn't thunk into the exhaust as the suspension compresses. And then we need to come up and round the spring here and head into this hole roughly where my head is. So that's the next piece of the puzzle. We've got I think that's a 30-degree bend in there at the moment, and I've still got some other bends in the box ready to try to get round here. So yeah, we'll just continue piecing more and more pieces of the puzzle together. So in order to make sure that we do clear the rear axle, I've whacked a couple of ratchet straps round the tow bar and pulled it down onto the ramp, and it's now sitting on the bump stops. There is no movement in that whatsoever. So we're now good to go back underneath and make sure that what we're going to build up around the axle is going to completely clear it. So we're over the axle now, and the next bit is the bit that's going to come down and sweep round towards the back end. So we've got the straight pipe is going to go in something like that, and I mean I could just leave it like that. It's kind of how the Japanese do it. I think massive great big pipes out the back, or we could weld it into place and then look at actually trimming it down. Might be the more sensible option. So although this does look kind of cool, it's probably not particularly practical. So what we're going to do instead is use this angle here, and that will come to about there. Obviously it will drop down by the diameter of this pipe once it's all cut in, but the length there looks pretty good to come out roughly in this area about here, which should look quite a nice little tailpipe when we're done. So that's the next thing to do, is get this chopped down to length. Okay, so that's the final piece of the exhaust puzzle tacked together. And yes, this is a fraction longer than it needs to be, but I haven't quite figured out how I want the end to look yet. Whether I do a straight cut or a slash cut or fit some kind of big fancy tip, I don't know yet. So it's just the tip to figure out. But other than that, it's looking really nice down. There's good clearance to the chassis and the axle all the way down. Really, really happy with how this is all tacked together. There's still two places that need finishing off with the welding, for tacking at least, and that is sort of around the cat and around the silencer. We've left those just a little bit loose so that we can just have a little bit of play in it to tweak it. So I won't do that until I've got all the hangers and the rubbers in place, and then I can go under and tack those and finish welding that up. But the next task really is going to be to pull it all off and fully weld up all of the joints that are tacked together now, because they're good. But that is going to be something that is going to have to happen in next episode. So I want to say a huge thank you to Rob, who is currently behind the camera and has given me a huge amount of assistance with getting this exhaust done. It would have taken me 3 times as long to do it by myself. So a huge thank you to Rob, and hope you've enjoyed the episode. And if you did, then do all the usuals like subscribe, share, and Patreon details down in the description. Rob is a Patreon of mine, and he's had an opportunity to come on the show. Who knows? You might get an opportunity at some point in the future if you're living locally enough to me and I need a hand. So anyway, thank you very much for watching, and see you next time on Garry's Garage. Bye!